I've made over $100,000 with vibe coding apps, and my goal of this series is to build a $1 billion valuation business, which you can follow step by step, building your own app alongside me using all the tips and tricks that I've learned from my thousands and thousands of hours of vibe coding. What we did in the last episode is give a value proposition and get the theme down. So for you guys who didn't watch it, I would recommend you to watch it. But we decided on a font, we decided on a color scheme, we decided on this logo that we're going to go with, and we decided the UX and what we want the UI to look like initially. Now comes the fun part. We're actually going to start vibe coding. Now what I'd recommend you to do is, if you have an idea, work with me step by step as we're going through this series. Make sure to turn on notifications and let's get into it. So to build over MVP and to get the UI all sorted, we're going to be using base 44. Now base 44, as I'm sure you guys know, is in my opinion, and in many other people's opinion, actually vibe code, the best vibe coding tool right now. Now I'll leave a link down below for it. It is an affiliate link, so you get $5 off. If you don't want to do that, you can just search up base 44 on Google and then go into it. Now here's my prompt. So first what I did is I attached all of the documents, all of the UI that we want to be using as a little bit of a reference, so that Adrian gets more context on what it should actually start working off of. Build the MVP for Perturb, a closed loop pricing simulation platform. Use the uploaded UI reference images to guide layout, spacing, typography, and component structure. Now, here's the important thing. I didn't directly go into the theme. We got the theme clarified, but I just want the UI and the MVP to be working initially before we start implementing all of the changes that we went over the last episode. Then I went over the tech stack. I went over what pages they should build. I went over step by step on what I want it to do and how I want the workflow to look like. Then after giving all of that information, I just simply rehashed how I want the data model to look like, how I want the mock backend for MVP to work. Now I also done a little bit of a style calibration, and yeah, then I finished my prompt with saying use the uploaded reference images and build a full MVP UI. So you always just want to rehash what you said. You want to just remind them, because obviously what happens is the more context you provide, the more it focuses on the tail end of a paragraph. So always the most important stuff you should repeat just to be sure. Okay, so I've now sent him a prompt along with the context and the images and the prompts that we went over. Now I decided to use Claude Opus 4 instead of Gemini 3 Pro, just because I believe that whilst Gemini 3 is really good right now, it overreaches a little bit and it makes things a little bit more complicated than it actually should be. Gemini 3 is really good for building on larger code bases when you know exactly what the problem is and you specify that problem. In my opinion, Claude 4.5 Opus right now is definitely the best one to build out MVPs. So here it is. Here's a first preview. Now it looks quite literally exactly what I provided, so it followed the context really well, and this is a nice thing to start off with. And you can go into create a simulation. Let's say you put in test, for example, change your baseline plan, and then yeah, you can start adding all of the scenarios and stuff. So as you probably remember from the last video, the goal isn't to get the entire app built today, it's to get the data ingestion MVP done. So we need to find a way, so we need to find a solution to where users can upload their data. So there are 3 solutions that we can provide for the data ingestion MVP. Now one is CSV upload, another one is allowing them to connect to the platforms to where we store all of the data about their agentic products and their AI usage. And the third one is having our own API and SDK. Now, the pros and cons to this are plenty. So for the CSV upload, very fast on board, and there's no friction at all. All the user would need to do is upload any relevant CSVs and we'd be good to go. You don't need to become part of the infrastructure like you do in the Perturb SDK. It's very experimentable and it's really good for backfills, of course. It's also selective over what they actually want to share. So let's say you only really care about tracking the amount of usage, and all the user would need to provide is only the CSVs that are relevant to usage metrics instead of anything else. Now for the cons, the data would be messy. There'd be a bunch of different variables, a bunch of different formats, meaning that we'd need to find a way to parse all of them and actually integrate all of them into one unified single format, which can actually pose a little bit of a problem, as it's not only the variables that would be different, but also the way that we represent the actual values. There's no stickiness at all. So for example, after a user uploads their CSV, then they would just exit and they might never use Perturb again, because of it's not part of the infrastructure. It's not plug and play, so every single time you'd want to run a simulation, you need to upload the same CSVs, or alter them, or remove some, or add some more. It's not continuously just gathering data. Instead, you need to constantly update it again and again by uploading it again and again. And it's not suitable for what the end goal of Perturb is. Now, for the Connect to X, it's less labor than the SDK, a little bit more labor than the CSV upload. The formats are kind of standardized, but with how fast agentic space is moving, to be honest, the formats do change quite often. And integrated into the ecosystem, what I mean by this is that it kind of shows a little bit of proof of the fact that you're working with Langfuse, or you're working with Helicon, or you're working with OpenAI. Although you're not technically working, the fact that people see those logos, it gives a little bit more proof and a little bit more reliability. Now, you're chasing tails, so let's say that Langfuse changed something above their format. Perturb will always have to try and keep on top of it, always try and be reactive instead of active. And yeah, I don't really see that being a viable option for the future. And then you're also dependent on the platforms. So let's say a platform goes down or whatever. Well, then it's not only their platform that takes a hit, but also your platform, Perturb. So there's Perturb's API or SDK. Now, in the end, of course, this is what Perturb's going to have. It's real time, it's consistent, everything under one unified format. So let's say that one of our customers uses 10 different model providers, OpenAI, Claude, Grok, Gemini, whatever. What we could do is we could take all of those events and just track them under one unified format. One unified format that Perturb uses all throughout its services, and it becomes a lot easier to then mix data to then actually have the most accurate data possible and to run the best simulations possible. It's also sticky, so you actually become a part of a code base and you become a lot more integrated and a lot more valuable to the actual company as you are now part of their company. And finally, there are fewer manual steps, so you're not going to have to consistently connect to whatever platform, or you're not going to have to consistently upload a bunch of CSV files. Once you're in there, Perturb will be gathering data consistently without the developers needing to do anything except maybe light maintenance. And that's where we go into the cons of this, of course. So there's a lot more initial friction, of course. Security is very vital as you're part of them now. And the maintenance is also vital. So we're going to have to provide docs, we're going to have to provide support and all of that stuff. But in the end, this is what we're going for. Although for the MVP, to validate the idea and to get the simulations started as soon as possible, we're going to be going for the CSV upload for our MVP. Okay, so now what I typically do is I explain what I want the feature to be and I ask ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever I'm using, to ask me for the vibe coding prompt. So for example here, I said, I imagine a workflow user drags and drops or uploads CSVs. This feature passes what metrics they have uploaded. For example, if user uploaded either amount, currency or price, it would both sort them into a price metric. It then shows a checklist of the metrics it has passed from a CSV the user has uploaded, stores all the data under unified formats, and allows the user to proceed after the user has uploaded all relevant CSVs. So yes, I will paste this into base 44 and let's see what it does. Alright, awesome. So here's a new feature. Press upload usage data, go onto it, and you can drag, like we specified that I wanted it to do, automatically passes the data that it believes that it ingested. So here we have the required metrics needed to begin the simulation. We have the optional ones such as model name or the prompt text, and here we can even input manual and what we actually map the dimensions to. So let's say we believe that this metric is total cost, for example, well, then we can do that manually. I really like this, and this is really intuitive. And I'm going to play around a little bit and then I'm going to come back to you with what I can cook up. So what I've decided to do is I've decided to start a new app and paste in the prompts again, yet without providing the context, because of what happened with that context. And what I've realized that Claude 4.5 Opus is really good at doing is building things from the ground up. But whenever it takes context and tries to use the images that you provide, this specific model doesn't really do very well with it. And it copies it so precisely that in the end it just becomes a little bit of a roadblock where it copies things so precisely that, let's say a screenshot has a couple of numbers on it. Well, instead of Claude Opus 4.5 understanding that they're just general numbers and you don't need to copy that precisely, what Opus does is it would literally hard code those numbers in. It really wants to copy the context. So yeah, it took me 2 minutes. I just pasted it all in again, and now I've pasted the new feature. So the prompts that we had just pasted in on the previous app, I put into this one, the build a full feature that allows users to upload CSV files. And yeah, it's currently working on that. So now going on to the simulations, we press new simulations, we can input a name, description, primary objective, which could be revenue growth or customer retention or custom objective, where you can define your own one, pricing model. And here's where the new feature comes in, where you press upload data. Let's say I have no CSV files, and I can input this data set. So once you've uploaded the CSV file, you can look at the column mapping, where you can manually map for columns. You can look at the data preview. Now this is a very empty data set. Let me get another one. Okay, so look at the data preview. Yet it's still unavailable to continue to the simulation because it hasn't got the required stuff. But let's say I was to input a cost CSV. Well, look, it's now ready to simulate, and we can go and continue to the simulation. Now, the important thing when you're vibe coding is not only Okay, can we get all the features really good? Can we get the features really complete? But it's getting the app in entirety. Now, the reason why you don't want to make one certain feature absolutely brilliant before moving on to the next one, which is really bad, is because of, as this is still kind of forming together, as our app idea is forming together and we're building Perturb step by step, day by day, we don't know exactly how the end result's going to be. So I'm happy with how this is looking right now, and I'm not going to try and make it perfect because I already know that some changes are going to be happening. Even by the next video, I'm sure that something's going to have changed. With that said, thank you for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Subscribe for more, and another episode should be coming up very soon. See ya.